And joining us to discuss tariffs is Ginger Chapman, who's a lawyer and political analyst. Thank you for being with us once again, Ginger. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. So this piece in Foreign Policy calls tariffs the American Brexit, a long grinding drag, rather than one big cliff edge, but a long-term drag on the economy. Well, what do you think to that?
Yes. Well, thank you, Mark, for having me today, and greetings to your viewers. And what we have seen with the tariffs, and especially President Trump's approach to implementing them, is that the tariffs have already become a disruptive force in both American and European economies, and the economies of our trading partners, partly because President Trump is now using these tariffs as a political tool, not just to reduce our deficit, to reduce our trade imbalance. And in fact, this shift, even though as the tariffs are starting to solidify and take shape, even though there are some signs of relief, for example, Germany is relieved that the tariff will be lowered from 27% down to 15% on their cars. However, other countries are hit with surprising punitive tariffs, for example, Brazil and India. So what we are seeing is these tariffs may not be just a Brexit, a long-term economic grind, but they do have more of the potential to maybe spark a Great Depression or spark economic upheaval if the world does not quickly work out some type of trade arrangements. Unfortunately for America, the trade arrangements we're seeing the world work out is to navigate or to migrate to BRICS. The countries in BRICS are now working out more solidified, more expansive trade agreements using their own currencies and finding ways around the United States trading barriers that we are now putting up. But mainly the tariffs, as they're starting to solidify, we are expecting disruption in the American economy. For example, rare earths, manufacturing, and also disruptions and increased prices in many of the everyday goods and commodities that we import. For example, coffee from Brazil, commodities. And so essentially, there's a great deal of international chaos in trade and tariffs as these tariffs solidify.
Yeah, well,
One important
let's go on to to how the consumer might experience these tariffs. The baseline we're thinking is 10%, but many countries paying more than that. When do you think the U.S. consumer will start to notice this, and to have goods priced higher in order for them to pick up the tab for these tariffs? And what sectors do you think, Ginger, are going to you will notice it in first?
Well, American consumers are already starting to see higher prices. Part of this is during the first quarter of the year when Trump was announcing tariffs, many companies rushed to stock up on inventory. So we had a massive import wave during the first quarter of the year, and then things slowed down in the second quarter. However, our prices are being impacted because we're already seeing restrictions, and more importantly, we're seeing supply chain disruptions and also increases in prices of oil. So this is the first wave we're seeing. Partly this is due to the threats of secondary tariffs on countries that buy Russian oil. The oil market is on a roller coaster ride. It's going up and down. However, even though gas prices are lower for the American consumer for our cars and personal transportation, oil prices for shipping cargo have increased. So this is already affecting the price of our goods. We're seeing one thing that's interesting, the 50% tariffs on Brazil. When we look at the actual list of tariffs, goods tariffed, and the goods that are exempted, Trump has exempted everything from orange juice, other food products, up to cars, air conditionings, refrigerators, airplanes. So Trump, when we look at the tariffs, Trump is already developing lists of exemptions for goods that American people are sensitive to the prices of. So, so we're worried about cars. We're worried about anything that requires a lot of commodities such as steel, aluminum, rare earth metals. One of the things that's alarming to the government is our friction with China. It turns out 2/3 of our weapons industry requires these rare metals that we get from China, and that China could hold hostage over further trade negotiations. So our economy is seeing quite a bit of chaos. We know that Trump is more focused on finished goods coming into the United States. These are the goods he wants the highest tariffs on. However, countries like India, they import a lot of small farm agricultural products to the United States. This will impact our food prices. China is our biggest supplier of pharmaceuticals. India is our second biggest supplier of pharmaceuticals as well as health supplements. So many of the items Americans consume today. One thing that is now throwing people and some uncertainty into Trump's tariffs is that even though Congress has delegated much of their tariff authority to the president, to the executive branch, which is why America calls our Congress our do-nothing Congress, because wherever possible, they delegate authority or avoid living up to their responsibilities. However, Trump announced these tariffs under as a national emergency because of our debt and our trading deficit. Recently, Trump has framed these tariffs as punitive measures, for example, against Brazil because of the political persecution of his friend Bolsonaro. Many other tariffs appear to be reactionary, driven by a desire to punish as opposed to a desire to rectify our trade imbalance. So the Court of International Trade, which is an American court, not an international court, it's our American court that looks at international tariffs, is now starting to look at Trump's tariffs, and his argument is weakening. They're saying these tariffs are not for national emergency to rectify trade imbalances. These are punitive tariffs.
Yes.
So as Trump gets...
He's definitely starting to use them as a weapon. I just wanted to talk to you a bit about the supply chain. You mentioned steel and aluminium or aluminum, as you might say, and the supply chains. Of course, one of the stated aims of President Trump, so he says, is for things to be made in America again. Is there any sign of any companies deciding to move their companies and their manufacturing to the United States?
Well, one of Trump's priorities is bringing investment into the United States, and he's announced with a great deal of enthusiasm and pride large companies, for example, semiconductor chip manufacturing. Apple may bring iPhone production to America, which would make their phones incredibly expensive, perhaps double in price. So, for example, we're seeing the companies such as Apple, initially they said they would bring iPhone manufacturing back to America. This is going to be too expensive because of our wages. So now they're looking for alternative ways to satisfy Trump, such as bringing large server farms and data processing centers into America. However, our supply chains are disrupted. This goes back several years to the COVID pandemic and our disruption of supply chains at that time. Now we are also seeing other disruptions in the form of the ghost shipping, the shipping companies that are transporting Russian oil, the shipping companies that are transporting American liquefied natural gas. And another thing which was surprising to Trump during our 12-day war with Iran, he realized that Iran can control the Straits of Hormuz, which would dramatically impact shipping around the world. It would impact global shipping. So as Trump is experimenting with announcing different tariffs, he is realizing the unforeseen consequences are coming from areas he did not anticipate, which further influences our foreign policy. Trump wanted to end the 12-day war because of the threat to shipping in the Straits of Hormuz. So right, everything is chaotic. Trump is disrupting the old order. And as he's trying to implement tariffs, it's not just the 10% for Europe, perhaps 15% on other goods. It's also the resulting effects on our shipping. When we tariff Russian oil, this affects the price of American oil.
Mm. Okay. Well, we've only got about a minute and a half left, Ginger. I just wanted to go back on something that you mentioned. You mentioned the Do Nothing Congress. Of course, Congress is supposed to have the power, is supposed to be the only power that can change taxes or put tariffs and levies on to goods like this. Of course, Congress is also the place who is supposed to allow the country to go to war. Trump went and bombed Iran without permission from Congress. Why don't they have any backbone at Congress?
Our Congress is in a disarray. Many American voters believe that Congress is bought and paid for. They are beholden to big corporate interests, to the military-industrial complex, to big money donors and lobbyists. And once again, because they've delegated so much of their authority, they've muddied the jurisdictional waters. The courts are going to have to sort through this. This is further muddied by President Trump's intentions, and our domestic economic crises are also having a large effect on the international tariff situation. It's not just Congress. Our Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, is in a battle with President Trump over interest rates. Okay. So we're seeing our housing market is out of control. Okay. Interest rates, inflation, jobs. So many factors.
Well, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you on. Ginger Chapman there, joining us to talk tariffs.